Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you again. I hope you had your little appointment with Jesus. We talk about being a Christian disciple. We call it the radical discipleship. Radical means there is no other choice. Because if you're radical, you will stand at the border. There is no more, there is no less. Radical discipleship, and today I'm going to talk about the praxis of it. And I would like to just to elaborate a bit. Now, how do you become a person living in the middle of the world on the one hand, and on the other hand, having nothing to do with the world or being not of the world? How does you do this? How do you do this? It's not easy. So what are the ingredients of an existence which sits right there in radical discipleship? Now let me tell you, all religion, even Christian religion, believes that there is a source of well-being, a spring of life. You go there and you enjoy yourself. So religion is made by man with one sole interest. You are interested in get as much as possible for yourself. For heaven, for instance. That's why you're religious. If religion wouldn't offer anything to you, you would not go there. So all religion is actually targeting human desires, answering human questions, being for us. So Islamic religion, for instance. Now, why would a Muslim go and kill himself? A person does this because he believes one day, after I have been bombed, under a Russian bomb somewhere in Syria, I will directly go to heaven. And 70 young women are expecting me there. Wow. I'm married with one and I barely make it. 70, that would be a hell for me. It's not a paradise. So they have their ideas. So Christians, they, for instance, come and become a Christian, and the parents say, well, go and give your life to Jesus, then you will come to heaven. You will come to heaven. You see, everything is targeting my own pleasure. So if I become religious, religion is going to offer me something. If religion doesn't offer anything, forget about that religion. The interesting thing is, if you follow that religious path, there is no difference between Christianity and Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism. Absolutely none. Because then religion is self-made, human-made, and it's not answering questions. With Jesus, everything is different. You see, Jesus, he sets another question ahead of everything. Radical discipleship is all about a call. Radical discipleship is all about a call. It's not about us. It's about God. It's about God. He himself decides to make the world as it is, to create the world as the world is. He made this decision one day to see that you, being a nice fellow, having a wonderful face, you have a bit more hair, and you could be a nice woman. But he decided, you be a man. And he also decided, she is going to be a woman. You could not pick. You could not say, hey, I'd like to be a woman. It seems to me you would not.
I would not.
So he decided to make us the way we are. So he is our maker. He is our creator. It's his decision. It's his sovereign will. He has decided to make us the way we are. And that's a great truth. So we are here not because of our own will. And it would be so shortcut to believe now, while we are here, we may decide to make our life the way we'd like to have it. And most of the people do this, even Christians. They run their own show. They decide, I will become a businessman, or I will become somebody doing a job behind me. So I just decide, I interrupt life, I go and do whatever I want to. It's my own decision. And if you ask Christians, now why do you live in Seattle? Why are you living here? Why you live in California? Well, because I decided. See, the thing is, with God, things are different. He calls us to become a disciple, and that's a decision for life. Decision changing everything. Just remember, a guy by the name Abram, a friend of mine is a Jew sitting right there. Nice Jew, hi, brother. The Jewish greet each other. Good to be here. So you see, Abram was a nice fellow. He has a very pious family. His father was well-to. They had enough money. They were living in a city, plenty with resources to make a good living. So they had everything there. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, God comes and he talks to Abram. And he says to him, leave your own place, your house, your family, your country, and follow me to a country I'll show you. That's a nice decision, eh? So first of all, you don't see the guy talking to you. Secondly, it is somehow religious. It might be not. Thirdly, it is the decision to leave behind family and to leave behind your country, to leave behind your well-being, to leave behind your finances, your business, everything, and then go to a country you don't even know where it is. It's complete, humanly speaking, complete nonsense. When Jesus came to his first disciples, Peter was sitting there, and the other fisherman, and he would talk to them and say, follow me. Where to? I'll tell you. What for? I'll tell you. But please tell me ahead of time. I'd like to know, because I grew up in America. I went to a college. I'm calculating life. I need a budget for this. I want to know how much I earn tomorrow. I want to see my family still has something to eat tomorrow. I want to have a house, a car, and you name it. I want to know ahead of time. And Jesus says, no, you just follow me. Paul was the most radical of all of them. And he says in Philippians chapter 3, verse 7, he says, everything which could be counted as a win for me, I've counted for loss. Actually, he uses another word. That word is bad, and it's very bad, and Americans never use that word, and Greek didn't either, but Jesus did. It's called shit. I counted everything for shit in order to obtain him, to get to know him and the power of his resurrection and join him in his suffering. That's a great word. And then he says, well, you know, I have given my life to Jesus, and now I do not live anymore. I've been crucified with the Lord, and who lives is the Lord in me. That's radical. It's incredibly radical. God says, I've decided to be there for you. I've decided to be there for you. I would like to see you one day. Steve Jobs would come to you and tell you, you know what, I decided to be your patronizing power. All the money I have is actually yours. Wherever I feel you need some, I'll give you. Wherever I feel you need a better car, I'm going to give it to you. Wherever you feel something you need to manage in life, I will help you because I am Steve Jobs. I got enough money for this, you see? Or let's say Bill Gates, or even Donald Trump. He would tramp on your feet and you would say, hey, hello, I decided you be my guy. You know, and I'm a multi-billionaire. I'm going to give you whatever you want to, but the only condition is I'm going to do it on my terms. Would you do this? Would you do this? Well, you would. It would be very easy to say yes, very difficult to say no. All of a sudden, there is a world of rich life, a world of money, a world of potential. There is everything possible, but only on one condition. The guy, he holds the control panel in his own hands. He controls the situation. You know, he is the best. You know, he has the most of money. And the only thing is, he holds on to the control panel. It's not me. That's the picture God actually is in. God says he is for us. He has elected us. He calls us to follow him. And the only condition he sets is, I'll control your life. Jesus tells us a little story. He would tell all kinds of stories like that. He says there was this little guy, a farmer's worker. If you had to earn your living working on a farm in the first century, you would be the last in the line. There was not much money to make. Even today, farmers are not the richest people. Some are. But then they are not farmers, they're industrial farmers. But the simple farmer just earns enough to get through the day. And he was not even a farmer, he was working for a guy. And so he is plowing the ground and he goes to that field. And all of a sudden, he hears a noise and it makes He gets a bit deeper and he finds a great what? Treasure. It's lots. It's incredible. But the simple truth is the field doesn't belong to him. In other words, the treasure is not his. He found it. He found it. It still doesn't belong to me. It's there, but it doesn't belong to me because the field is not mine. And then Jesus says the guy went home. He sold everything he had. Everything, it says, and bought that field. And I imagine the guy was married, freshly married. So he came home and told his wife, "I'm going to sell everything." His wife asked him, "What for?" And he probably didn't say a word because he knew you tell a woman one story and then all of a sudden the whole village knows the story. And God knows, never ever that man who owns the field is going to sell the field to me. Who is going to sell a field with a treasure in it? Nobody will. So he has to do this quietly. So he says to his wife, "We sell everything. We even sell your hut. And we sell your second dress, your wonderful wedding dress." Because it says he sold everything he owned. And of course, I believe what happened. I know what happened because I know Jewish women. That woman was very mad, so he sent him out of house, kicked him out, kicked his butt, and told him, "I don't need a husband like this." And so he went, but he still sold everything and then bought the field, and then he found the treasure, and everybody was excited. His wife came to me and said, "Hey, Moshe, you great guy. Yeah, I know you are the best man we have. I love you, man. I just love you. I love you. Forgive me, please." It's a huge celebration. How much does the kingdom of God cost? Just simply everything. Everything. It costs for everybody the same price. It's the same price. It doesn't matter how much you have. You don't have to prove God you're great. You don't have to prove God you're educated. Paul says to the Corinthians, look around you. Look around you. How many wise people are here? How many educated are here? How many philosophers are among us? None. Because the worst of the world, God has elected to become the most beautiful. God decides that there's only one price to pay. He himself decided, you want to follow God, you stop to control your own life. You stop to calculate. you follow. Now you say, well, it's understandable, and of course we all behave like this. I hope so. But in reality, most of Christianity doesn't follow God. They follow religion. They follow a spring. You see, they follow a place where they may get something out of it. They want to be Christians in order to get to heaven. So they follow an idea. They do not follow God because there is no personal relationship. Or did the Lord talk to you? Did you hear His voice? Did He tell you to live where you live, to study what you study? Did He tell you to go to places you go, to watch videos you do, to run to the internet and visit pages you do? Did He tell you that? Did He really? You say, well, Johannes, don't be that little-minded, that short-minded. There is a world of a human personal decision. I do what I want to. That's the problem, eh? That's exactly the problem. Discipleship presupposes a call, and that call is radical. It is radical. It asks us to leave the past and move into where the Lord leads us. So Peter did, Paul did, the disciples did, and they experienced all kinds of interesting stuff. Sometimes great stuff. Apostle Paul, he even says there were times where he was having everything, gold and silver, everything, and there were times he was beaten up like a dog. And in both situations, God was deciding. God was deciding. There's only one mission journey Paul decided himself. One day he decided he would like to go and do missions. And so he came to Barnabas and told Barnabas, you know what, Barnabas, let's go and visit our brothers. And encourage them and, let's go to a mission field. Paul decided. And then he runs into an argument with Barnabas. They have a huge argument. At the end, they separate, and Barnabas and Paul never, ever after that would do any mission together. It's a huge fight. But Paul still doesn't see the problem. So he gets Silvanus, and then Paul and Silvanus move on for their second missionary journey. And wherever they come, the Spirit of God says, no. He speaks actually Russian. He says, "Нет. Нет. No." They want to go to Galatia. Нет. They want to go to there. Нет. Нет. No. 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 Everything is closed down. They can't go. And it's wonderful how Lucas, who wrote the book on the Acts of the Apostle, the medical guy, how he exactly formulates. He says, Paul wanted, Paul did, Paul healed, Paul there. It's always his own decision. And then they end up in Troas, in the city at the Aegeus, a great city in the ancient world. And all of a sudden, for the first time on this journey, God sends to Paul a vision. And he sees a Macedonian calling him, come and help us. And then Lucas writes down, he writes, and it was great in the eyes of the Lord and in our own eyes. And so we followed the call. No Paul, it's the Lord. And it's the brothers and sisters. It's not him. It's not me. It's not a baboon called apostle. I will do, I am deciding, it's my thing, it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me, O Lord. And so it's me, it's me, it's me, it's me, O Lord. And where is the Lord himself? Paul understood the message. He never again did this. But here he did a big mistake. He wanted Christianity to function his way. He wanted his faith to be his own thing. Now, God does not allow this. Christianity is all about God calling us to do the works he has pre-designed for us to do. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. And he sets into his church apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers in order to to facilitate the holy ones, the called ones, the disciples to do the works he has predesigned for them to do. Ephesians 2:10. It's fascinating. Martin Luther, all the reformers, they would always quote Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, which says, we are saved by grace because of faith. And then they stopped. And they do not see that there is some addition to this, which says, God has called us to do works he has predesigned for us to do. We have no option. If we opt to do our own thing, we're lost. We're lost in the jungle of our own decisions. And our discipleship is going to be very religious. We may look like religious people. We behave like religious people. We will be everything in the world, very pious. We'll be the best Baptists, but we will not be disciples of Christ. Because disciples of Christ follow his way, not their own. Not their own. The little story we were just hearing from our brother, telling us a story about going to a store and then talking to a management and praying for people was interesting. We went to Costco just to see for whom the Lord wanted us to pray. We want to hear the Lord telling us for whom to pray. I very often tell the story of a man who changed my whole way of thinking in this regard. His name was Mike, and those of you who have listened to sermons like this, you know the story. But I'm still telling you the story because it changed my own life. I was pastoring a church in Germany, and one day somebody knocked into my door. I opened the door, and there was a black guy standing in the front of me, and telling me in English that he is from Nigeria, and he wanted just to know whether I was the pastor of the church. I said, yes, I'm pastor of this church. Or he says, do you have New Testaments to give away? So I told him, yes, I do. All right, then I become a member of your church if you give me every day New Testaments to be given away. I asked him, now who is going to give them away? He says, I will do so. He's an interesting guy, just a person comes to you and says, hi, I'd like to become a member of your church if you give me New Testaments for free, of course, to be given away. So we started this business. He would come in every morning to me and ask me for New Testaments. The interesting thing was, sometimes he asked for 2, sometimes he wanted to have 5. He even wanted to have 10 and more, but the numbers, they were always different. So one day, I got a bit fed up, and I am a rational person, I am a Western person. I told Mike, why not take a whole package of New Testaments? He wouldn't have to come every morning. And he says, no, brother, that's not the way I do it. Because I asked the Lord first, how many New Testaments will I give away today? And then the Lord tells me 2, 5, 6, 11. So I started to get interested in that person, and I followed him. I observed him. So one day in the winter, I just go and sneak behind him, and he goes to the center of the city. He got about 3 or 4 New Testaments, and then for hours he was standing there like this, did nothing. It's classic non-German. For a German doing nothing, it means you're lazy. But this guy was standing there just doing nothing. And all of a sudden, he rushed into a bank. And I didn't go in because I didn't want to embarrass him. Rushed into the bank, and after a certain time in the bank, he came out and he was all smiling. And I saw there was 1 New Testament less in his hands. Now, as always, he would give away the New Testaments, and he would give away my card, my business card. And then, as almost always, every second or third or fifth, fourth day, people would call me and ask me, where's the black guy? So this time, the director of the bank phones me. He says, where's that black guy? I asked him, what happened? Well, he says, this black guy came in, it was cold outside, and I thought he was just warming himself up, and I yelled at him. And then he looks at me, and he runs into me, and he says, you know what, I have to give you a New Testament. And I was very, very mad at him. I said, well, I have enough New Testaments at home. At home there's my wife. She has cancer and she lays there dying. And every second, fourth, fifth day, Christians like you come and pray for my wife. I'm sick and tired of Christianity. Why would you always come? Stop doing this. Oh, this black guy says, let me pray for your wife. And so he prayed for my wife and then left the New Testament there and disappeared. I came home and my wife was healthy. And now I want to know where the black guy is. I could tell you many stories of him. One was just crossing everything. One day he is giving away his New Testaments in the center of the city of Bielefeld, a German city. And the guy comes by and asks him, "Why are you here for?" Oh, he says, "I'm here because I give away New Testaments. My pastor always gives me the exact number." Okay, so the guy came from Holland and from Netherlands, and he was watching him. And all of a sudden, Mike runs into an old woman, and gives her a couple of euros to buy a sausage. Then the Dutch guy asks him, you also give away money? He says, no, that's my money for a train, because God just told me I should give that old lady this couple of euros. My pastor also gives him money for a ticket. And this time I probably have to go back, walk the whole distance back. And it's just 20 kilometers, but it's okay. The Dutch was somewhat gracious, so he took the guy along with his great Mercedes-Benz. So they go to the place, and he brings him there. And then a day later, this Dutch guy phones me. He says, I couldn't sleep an hour. I couldn't sleep. The whole night I couldn't sleep. I had this vision. I have to give my Mercedes-Benz to that black guy. So I told him, okay, bring the Mercedes-Benz. It's okay. Great car, very expensive car, costs in Germany more than 150,000 euros. It's about $160,000. So he brings the car, and I'm somewhat happy, told Mike, so we sell the car, and then we buy lots of New Testaments, of course, and all of this. No, Mike says, I don't know what for I got the car. So we'll first figure out, and then we'll see what we do with the car. Now, he was figuring this out for about a half a year. And that stupid Mercedes, he was standing in our garages. The whole church was enjoying the fact that the car would move from one place to the other. Mike himself didn't have any license to drive a car, so he couldn't drive that car. And so we had to watch and wait until the Lord speaks to Mike. We all got mad with him. And one day Mike comes to my office, shining like a sunshine. And he says, now I know the Lord has placed his divine call on my car. So what does he ask you to do? We have to bring the car to a Central African Republic. Central African Republic is beyond Sahara. That's a desert. It is at least 4,500 kilometers away from Germany. You have to pass Islamic states. It's a war situation. How can you do this with this car? So I told Mike, I'm not sure. Oh, I'm sure, he says. I know exactly. I even have the address where we go to. We have to bring the car to this and this person. That's his name. I don't know who he is, but that's the name, that's the address, and God told us to bring the car there. Told me. There was lots of arguing, lots of discussion. At the end, nobody convinced Mike. As soon as God spoke to Mike, everything was done with this guy. So, to make the story short, we brought the car to the Central African Republic. And now the story started to unfold. We brought the car at a certain date. brought the car. We didn't knew nothing. We just had the address. But the address was an address of a bishop of a Pentecostal church in South Africa. A very prominent bishop, living very poor. This bishop got into an argument with the president of the Central African Republic. And the president told him, if your God still exists, then here's the date. And he gave him a date. And you will be at 9 o'clock in the morning here in a black Mercedes-Benz. This and this and this type of a car. Surely enough, that bishop would never buy such a car, never have such a car. But if your God lives, you be here in such a car, then I know, then I have an exact proof that your God exists. And if not, then you will not hinder us to introduce Islam to our country. It was a political event of an incredible size. A whole destiny of a country was played around. And now we are there. A day in the evening of the day where the next morning he had to go to the president. He opened the door of his little house. He saw the car and he says, "Thank you, Father. Thank you. You keep your promises." And the next morning he drove in that car to the president. You should have seen the president. Wow. Mike wasn't with us. And when we came back home, Mike was there, and the first question he says, "Now, what did God want it with the car? Tell me." He always has a divine call about things he wants us to do. It might look terribly stupid, but at the end, it is an incredible story. You want to be a radical disciple of Jesus? Then you have to decide to stop all control mechanisms which control your religion. You have to stop to believe that Christianity is a spring of life you can use whenever you need Christianity. You have to stop the idea to think that all is about you. It's all about Him. It's all about Him. And as soon as I join Him, as soon as I follow His call, then He is opening all the springs of life, eternal springs of life. And then the Bible says we will experience the fullness of God Himself. Wow. Wow. I was a young man, a little older than some of you today, still very young in comparison to today. 1991, the Lithuanian Republic in the former Soviet Union declared independence from the Soviet Union. It was the first Soviet republic doing so. And Russian tanks were moving into the city of Vilnius. The situation was horrible. It was at the edge of war. And while we were sitting at the radio sets and television sets, a friend of mine phones me and says, "Johannes, you can't sit here as a chicken. We have to go to Lithuania. We have to tell them the Lord is going to help you. We have to be freedom fighters. We have to go there." I said, "Well, how do we go there? The country is closed. There are Russian tanks." He says, "You have never been afraid to smuggle Bibles, to run across borders. Now all of a sudden you play a chicken. Get up, man." We got 50 youngsters, all of them as old as you are, hired a huge bus, received visas for Belarusia, and smuggled ourselves into Lithuania. Then I went to the government and I told them that we came illegally, and so we want to support the freedom fight of the Lithuanians by running evangelistic crusades. And they allowed. So for 10 days we were driving the country and evangelizing everywhere. Crowds of people would come and listen to the gospel of Christ. We had a great time. It was such a great time, you can't believe. And at the end of the tour, I'm sitting in a hotel room in Kaunas, in the city of Kaunas, the second largest city in Lithuania, and the Minister of Education phones me. Now I need to tell you, I have never known any Minister of Education. It was just me, Johannes Reimer. So Johannes Reimer was called earlier Vanka. That's why I'm Ivan Ivanovich. I never had any contacts to guys up there. My father is a слесарь пятого разряда, meaning he is just an ordinary worker. I do not come from an intellectual family. I am far removed from being something special. My family is simple, and a simple person. And here a minister phones me. And he invites me to come and see him. So we went to a city, and he showed me a huge compound in an old city of Panevėžys, great buildings. He says, all of this, the government of Lithuania grants you if you start a university, a Protestant university in our country. Just imagine, you would be in my place. I was there, completely flabbergasted. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any resources. I didn't have any doctorate myself. I was not prepared to run any university. I never founded any university. I was just Johnny. Johnny, you see, Johnny. Be good, Johnny. No more. But God does not make any mistakes. Then I came home and I promised the minister at the 30th of October of the same year, I would come back to Lithuania and I would tell him whether we accept the offer of the government or not. So I went home, I went to all kinds of churches, I went here and there to people, I was begging with them, I was telling them there is a chance to start a Christian university in Lithuania. And they were looking at me, and say, where? In Lithuania? It's a front zone. You want to go to Lithuania? You want to risk your life? You want to risk your money? Who does this? It's stupid. Nobody does it. But I told them, God has spoken, seems to me. Well, they say, no, God has spoken. A minister of education has spoken. It's not a God. It's a former communist minister of education. To make the story short, I started praying. I said, Lord, if you want me to go to Lithuania and give them an answer, I have to have a way to go. And then he speaks to me. He says, go to Canada. So I took a plane and flew into Canada and came to the city of Winnipeg. I don't know why, but I came to the city of Winnipeg. And a friend of mine, whom I knew there, he comes with a long list. He says, well, you see, I'm in fundraising. All those Christian guys have lots of money. I said, that's nice. But what do I do with this? Well, you want to start a university, you start with money. That's the American way of thinking, right? First money and then everything else. First we take Manhattan and then the rest of the world. So we just have to be there with the money. Money, 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 money. So I looked at the list and started praying, and all of a sudden I see one name. And it's just clearly to me, you have to call that person. So I started phoning him. But the person was very rich, lots of secretaries, one secretary after the other. It was a very, very long process to reach the guy. And finally, his secretaries were so mad with me, they went to the guy and told, a Russian is phoning here day after day. We are sick and tired of this. Talk to him. So he talked to me, and he gave me 2 minutes. He says, you come for 2 minutes, you tell me what you want, and then you disappear. And man, you never again phone my company. You got the point? I say, yes, I do. So I came to his office. After 2 hours sitting in the office, I left the office. And 2 months later, we were on the way to Lithuania. And we signed together the agreement of founding the first Christian university ever in the former Soviet Union. Today, the Christian university in Klaipėda in Lithuania is the largest Christian university in all over Europe. There is no larger. Not in Germany, no in England, nowhere else. It's the largest university in all Europe. Why? Because God decided. And He uses Vankas. He uses Vankas. The only question is, do I want to go His way? Of course, there are other stories which are much less great. The story, for instance, when I went to the Bible college. I came to a Bible college, just left the former Soviet Union. In 1976, we were expelled from the country because I was a youth party guy and then became a Christian and then went into a labor camp and I was released and then we were pushed out of the country. So in 1976, we came to Germany And I went to a Bible college. I had no money. I had no support. And the most problematic thing was I had no money to buy toothpaste. You know, and then you don't clean your teeth for a day or two. And then the Germans, they're rude. And they would ask you, are you coming from Russia? Здесь русский дух, здесь Русью пахнет. It's the Russian spirit somehow in the air. It smells a bit like Russia. They're rude. Then I would go and beg for toothpaste. I went to my parents, and my parents told me off. They said, we didn't want you to go to Bible college. We don't want you to be there, so you get no money from us. I was even tempted to steal toothpaste one day, but I didn't. For half a year, going and begging for toothpaste. That toothpaste became the biggest temptation of my life. I had to beg every day. And I was praying to the Lord. I was asking Him for money. Heaven was quiet. Heaven was absolutely quiet. God didn't say a word. And every morning, again and again, I was doing the same exercise. And I was sick and tired of this. And one day, I told God off. I told Him, no, stop it. Forget. I'm not going to beg for toothpaste any longer. I'm an engineer by profession. I'll earn enough money, and I promise you, I will bring loads of toothpaste to this Bible college. They will all have toothpaste. They will take a bath in toothpaste. But I am fed up with this. So, and then you talk like this to God, and somehow it feels great. Have you ever told your father off? So it feels great. And so I got on my feet again and left my room. And as soon as I leave my room, a friend of mine runs into me and he says, hey, Joe, let's go and pray together. I need 20, let's say dollars. It was in Germany. It was German marks. I need just $20. Let's pray together. And I say in my heart, with you and for you, I'll pray. For me, that's gone. So we prayed. The next morning, after a pause in our study process, he comes to me and says, you see, here, see the cover, the little cover? There is exactly $20 in it. And then he says, there is a similar thing in your box. And have you ever felt your father is going to punish you? You knew I go to my father, and there is something incredibly heavy waiting for you. And that was exactly the feeling. We call it a move to Canossa. Canossa was a little village in Italy, and Henry III, he was running against the Pope, and the Pope decided to punish the guy. And so he had to go to Canossa on barefoot in winter, crawling on all his knees to the Pope in order to receive forgiveness. All the way since, we call this way towards punishment a way to Canossa. So it was my way to Canossa. I go to my box and I feel, now I'm going to experience a very, very difficult thing. So I got my couvert and I open it, and there were $30,000 in German marks, of course, $30,000. And I hear a voice from heaven, very loud, nobody else heard it, I'm hearing this. And God says, you stupid man, you want money? I want training. You pick. I can give you as much money as you want to. That's not a problem for me. But I want you to be trained. So you decide. And if you decide to pick my training and follow my call, you will push and put all the $30,000 in the boxes of the other students. And you will go and beg for toothpaste tomorrow again. It's quite a decision. A very unpleasant one. I fell on my knees. I cried tears. I was only 23 years old. I love to have $30,000. buy myself a nice car, all the toothpaste I needed. And God says no. And then I distributed all the 30,000. And next morning I went on begging. And I did so for almost a whole year yet. And after that year, a friend of mine, the same guy I prayed with when I received my punishment, he comes to me and says, Johannes, you somehow crazy. Why are you running around every morning and beg for toothpaste? Take a whole tube. And he gave me enough toothpaste for a month. And I looked at him, didn't you see that I was begging for 1.5 years? Oh, I never saw it before. I was just smelling sometimes a bit more Russian smells in the area around you. So God stopped this. He was training me. He trains me. He trains you. He allows times in our life where times become difficult. And we believe it's wrong. No, it's preparing us. It's preparing us for the big story. It's preparing us for the big story. And if I couldn't have waited for toothpaste, I would probably never have waited for the millions to start a Christian university in Lithuania. Never, ever. There were many other such stories as Lithuania. My life was full of God's miracles in many places of the world. Why? Because it's a very simple matter. I follow Him. And I really don't care whether I live tomorrow or not. It's not about me. It's about Him. Because as long as I am with Him, heaven is with me. As long as I am with Him, there is no problem. He will always find a way out. Sometimes a great way out. Sometimes a miraculous way out. Sometimes such a way out, you wouldn't believe it. As a young man, being of your age, I was smuggling Bibles. And before we went to the border of Russia or Central Europe or even to Africa, to Northern Africa, to the Muslim countries, we would always pray and ask the Lord to lead us. And so we would hear Him say, take that entry into the country, and we would. And one day we go to this place and we had an old car and it was packed with New Testaments. Went to Romania and then our Romanian brothers would bring it to Moldova. And so the New Testaments would go into my former homeland. We were very happy to do so. So we come into close to the border and all of a sudden there was a heating system. And that heating system seemingly broke and all the steam came into the car. We were driving in a Turkish sauna. We came into the border, and they was looking at us and said, "What's coming on? It's incredible. It's all in steam." Well, we told them this is what happened, and then they wanted to check on our car. It was an old car. The Bibles were poorly hidden. They could find everything, but it was so hot in that car. The sauna was terrible. So the guy looked at us. We were sweating our life out, and he says, "Drive." And so we drove in. And as soon as we passed that border, about 5 kilometers later, steam disappeared. Everything was in order again. And we never had any problem with that car any longer. So God just allows our car to steam a bit. Heaven steaming around. Or the other time, we came into the border and then this guy comes in and he takes a drill and then he says, "Biblia," and he points to the floor of our mobile home. And there we had such a pocket, deep pockets full of New Testament. And then he says, "Biblia." He's quite sure, so he drills a hole in. Because when paper comes out, then there is evidence, and I'm lost. So what happened? So he did once, no paper. Second, no paper. 4, 5 times, no paper. Absolutely no paper. I started to take pictures. Say, well, you destroy my car, man. But myself wondering, how comes? We need to see paper. Did God change paper into metal? What happened? And then we came over the board and we looked in, and our technician, he was strengthening the pockets with 1 centimeter, square centimeter of metal, whatever, to strengthen that pocket. The guy hit 5 times the 1 centimeter. There were only 5. And he was hitting the 5. Do you understand mathematics and physics? You know what it means? To drill 5 times spontaneously and always hit just 1 centimeter because there was no other way to avoid the getting paper out of it. God's hand protecting us. And now I could spend hours telling you stories like this. If you are led by the Spirit is going to let you to experience His power. And if He doesn't, He teaches you. He trains you. The only question is, are you at the place where He calls you to be? See, it would be very, very difficult to expect a plane to land right across the road here. Planes in Seattle land at Seattle International Airport. If you want to fly, you have to go to that airport. You can't sit down in your home and say, but I decide I'm going to wait for a plane here. I'm not at the place where God is, but I will sit and wait. I do it my way. You're not Frank Sinatra. And even if you be Frank Sinatra, your life may end as his. Much too much alcohol, and much too much drugs. And at the end, you did it your way, and you ended up where guys like that end up. If we want to be disciples of Christ, we have to understand it starts with the call of God. And the wonderful thing is, all of us are called by God. You don't have to be educated. You don't have to be American. You don't have to be Russian. You don't have to be Spanish. You don't have to be Mexican. You have to be just what you are, you. And God decides to call you. And He has a plan for you. And He has a way of life for you. And the only decision you make, I'll follow that plan. It is difficult to start. And the devil he will activate the whole hell to hinder such a life. And I tell you, I know exactly, because I have experienced this many times in my life. Companies, leading companies of the world, phone me and offer me a job. You know, one company offering me $500,000 annual salary, a car, a secretary, an office. And then I asked them, so what else are the conditions? They say, well, there's only one condition. You stop evangelizing. There's only one condition. You stop doing what you do for the Lord. Of course, I didn't accept that offer. I could have accepted it. I would live differently. I would wear different dress. I would have a different lifestyle. But I would be probably very unhappy, because God's call into my life is evangelism. Did this make me rich? No. Did it make me happy? Oh yeah. I am the most happy person in the world. That's why my belly is growing that fast. I'm the most happy person in the world. Why? Because God has called me, and there's a divine call on my life, and I want to fulfill that call. This morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, our time here in Seattle, my daughter phoned me. She left for Australia. With Youth with a Mission, she will be a missionary for 2 years, organizing missionary moves into the Islamic countries with a dancing and performance company, a Christian performance company. And it's my youngest, it's my baby. And I said goodbye to her, not knowing whether she comes back home, because she will go into the most dangerous places to sing and perform for the Lord. Was it easy for a father like me? No. But it was rewarding. Did I cry tears? Yes. But this morning, I blessed her. God gave her to me for a time, and now I have given her back to God. And she moves into an adventurous life. But why would I prohibit her to do what I have experienced myself? Why would I? I don't want to. I want her to experience God's gracious love and God's gracious power and God's richest offers the way I did. So my little daughter, 22 years old, is now flying to Australia. Of course, being her father, I'm following her closely. And I asked her to promise me, never follow me, follow God. Because I'd like you to be close to me. I'd like to see your children growing up because I want to be a grandfather. I want to enjoy my daughter just close to me, but it's absolutely wrong because God gave her to me in order to be given to him back, to do missions. So what's God's call upon your life? What's your call? What are you called for? Think about it. Think about it. Discipleship, radical discipleship, starts with this one decision. I want to know what his call for my life is, and I want to follow him obediently. May the Lord bless you. Amen.